One Fight Night 12, Superlek vs. Khalilov is coming up, and I'm going to break down every single fight on the card, from the first bout on the prelims all the way up to the main event. Let's get started. First up, there is a lightweight kickboxing contest between Constantine Rusu and Doynjin Shishirov. Rusu is coming off of 2 wins over Islam Murtazayev in Tuchu. Meanwhile, Doynjin is coming off of a first-round knockout over a Tanzanian fighter on the Olympic circuit. Whoever gets this fight is probably going to get a title shot against Ursul in the foreseeable future. As for who will probably win this fight, I'm going to give it to Rusu. I just think he's been fighting a far more elite level competition, especially Islam Murtazayev, who's aged very well. Tuchu, the fight was extremely close. Some people gave it to Tuchu, and arguably he should have won it. But Rusu did show a lot of solid effort in that fight. And even outside of that, he has fought legit guys like Florian Lamborian. But if you look at Shishirov, he hasn't really fought at an elite level of competition. I think Rusu's overall offensive pressure and output is going to be too much for him. It's something that he hasn't really had to deal with in the past. So I'll have Constantine Rusu getting having constant output, disrupting anything that Shishirov is trying to do, and him and Rusu taking a decision. Preceding that will be the bathroom break fight between Amanda Aliquin and Tammy Musaneci. I've made my feelings on Tammy Musaneci known in the past. I'm not a big fan of her, and even though she's a talented fighter, I'm guessing this is not going to be the most entertaining contest out there. She'll probably win this fight. She was able to completely negate an ADCC world champion, and even though Aliquin is legit, she's an IBJJF world champion, she's not going to be on that same level of activity and not on that same level of skill as Nicolini was. So I am just going to give it to Tammy, taking another pretty lackluster 10-minute decision where she's just jostling and being able to out-control her opponent via a decision. Walter Gonclaws makes his long-anticipated MMA debut against Doynjin Panama. A little weird fight to be putting on this card. I'm surprised they didn't put it on the Lumpini circuit because this is not the highest class of MMA. Walter is making his debut after coming off of a devastating loss against Superlek. And Doji is just not a very high-level guy at all. All due with respect to him, his record looks great on paper at 14-2. Then you realize that most of the guys that he beat were cans. The best guy he beat was probably 13-7 Dmitry Shapovalov. And he's also riding a 2-fight losing streak. One against Andrey Mashenko, who's 1-3. And the other was his only fight and one up to this point 2 years ago, which was a loss to 42-year-old Damarun. Not only did he lose to Damarun, he got finished by him, which is just not something that you want to see. And this is going to be a horrible fight for him, especially since he is a striker taking on Walter Gonclaws, one of the most explosive flyweight Muay Thai fighters. Unless Gonclaws just has trash takedown defense, is not able to defend against Doynjin, he should probably just run through him. I just don't think Doynjin has the chin on him to take Walter's power punches. So this should be a fun little 60-second fight where just Walter puts on a very impressive performance. So I'll have Walter taking a first-round knockout. Laura Fernandez takes on Fetjukia Lupipinantom in what is most likely a women's atomweight Muay Thai title eliminator. Both these women are coming off of wins. Fernandez took Janet Todd to an absolute limit over a 5-round war and has just beaten Dang Dun Fa in a close decision, which in all honesty she probably lost. Now she's taking on Fetchjicham, who has just been making waves over the Muay Thai circuit, is on a very long is on a 10-fight win streak. All but one of them have been via a finish. She's gotten 2 finishes on the Lumpini circuit so far over high-level opponents, and now Laura is in her way. All due respect to Laura Fernandez, I don't think she wins this fight. She was barely able to beat Damding Fa, who I think had a hard time adjusting to the one style of Muay Thai. And Laura just continuously leaves her chin up in the air. Her boxing defense is not all there. Janet was able to tag her consistently and hurt her on multiple occasions, and Janet does not have anywhere near the power that Pichi does. Pichi has just such a crippling output of aggression. He's going to constantly be landing on Laura, and Laura is just going to be in a constant battle of just defense, trying to just survive the barrage of attacks that Pichi just continues to present. So I'll have Pichi taking this fight. I actually think she'll get a finish on Laura here. I'll have her taking a first-round knockout. 2 undefeated featherweights up next as Aaron Canary takes on Akbar Abdulali. Abdulali ran through Ohotak in his one debut, finishing him in less than 60 seconds, and is from the great nation of Kyrgyzstan. Meanwhile, Canary is from Ecuador, is making his one debut. Canary does have more experience in one, however, I just do not like him for this fight. He looked very stagnant in the one fight that I saw him in. Very flat-footed, hands were a little too low for my liking. Meanwhile, Abdulali just runs through people. Constant aggression, his boxing is lethal all over the place. There was lots of uppercuts and hooks that are just full of power. The pressure he puts on people is just absolutely debilitating to whatever they're trying to do. I see him consistently tagging Arion. The only chance that Arion has here is possibly trying to take down Abdulali, but Abdulali has shown solid takedown defense before, so I'll have Abdulali getting another first round finish here, and hopefully this can land him a shot with someone in the top 5. After that, there's a flyweight MMA contest between Zaiwei and Yuya Wakamatsu. This one's going to be very interesting. This is going to be a dangerous fight for Yuya Wakamatsu. He's coming off of 2 straight losses, a submission loss to Adrian Moraes, and then a knockout fight loss over Kim. And Zaiwei is just such a better boxer than Kim was in terms of just overall technique and just boxing ability. He was able to drop Reese McLaren, who has one of the more underrated chins in all of one. The man took bombs from a bantamweight prime Bibiano Fernandez and still was able to stay upright and was never really that hurt in the fight. Meanwhile, Zaiwei was able to drop him rather easily. Yuya is just so hittable on the feet. His boxing defense is not there. Keeps his hands low and just does not really move his head much, especially since that's a dangerous proclamation against a guy like Zaiwei, who's so young in the game and just so good on the feet. Yuya does have the offensive wrestling to make this fight easier for him. I'm just not very trusting that he'll utilize it that much because he didn't really even shoot that many takedowns against Kim in their previous fights. Not to mention, I don't believe that he has the BJJ advantage to scare Zaiwei from trying to get up. Zaiwei has had about a year to work on his takedown defense, and I believe that he will be able to defend most of Yuya's attempts, hurt him on the feet, and get another first-round finish for him. So I'll have Wei taking a first-round knockout. Heavyweights up next as Amir Alkbari takes on Dustin Johnson. I'm not going to lie, if this fight doesn't end in the first round, it's probably going to be terrible. I mean, Alkbari has some of the worst cardio you've ever seen. On the feet, he can really only go for like 3 to 4 minutes, and then he's just done. When he wrestles, his cardio is actually better, which is kind of crazy. You never really see that in MMA. But even then, he just starts to gas out over time. On the feet, he is pretty terrible. I mean, if 45-year-old Brandon Vera is able to outstrike you, you know something's wrong there. He is a very talented wrestler, extremely explosive, could be dangerous if he does land. However, it's just so difficult for him to land because he doesn't have a whole lot of technique there. Meanwhile, Dustin Johnson is just kind of mediocre everywhere. He's okay striking-wise, his wrestling's fine, his BJJ is fine, his cardio is decent, and his chin is decent as well, but for heavyweight, having a decent cardio is having excellent cardio, so that's something that he's one of the better fighters at for the division, is just being decent at going those full 15 minutes. So the only way I see Johnson winning this is if he is able to survive an early barrage by Alkbari. Alkbari gasses badly, and then Johnson is just able to piece him up as the fight progresses. I don't think Johnson has that knockout power against Alkbari, but he could cruise to a decision if Alkbari doesn't take this well. Alkbari just needs to wrestle and just stack up the points as soon as possible, do as much damage as possible, try and get Johnson out of there. However, understand that Johnson's going to be a tough man to crumble. I am going to lean Alkbari for this fight. I think the wrestling advantage is going to be too much for him. Johnson did show solid takedown defense against Hugo Canuta, but Canuta does not have the same offensive wrestling that Alkbari has. I think Alkbari is also more explosive. So I'll have Alkbari landing enough points in the earlier rounds to just stack that up and then surviving a late barrage by Johnson to take a decision win here. That will be 3 in a row for him, so maybe we can have a rematch with Anatoly and Qatar. The co-main event. Gary Toone and Shamil Gassanov, 2 guys in the top 5, will be fighting in what is most likely going to be a title eliminator, especially if Toone wins. Toone's coming off of a win back in January. Shamil Gassanov, on the other hand, ran through Kim. This is going to be a fascinating fight for both of these men. Toone has improved substantially on the feet. In fact, I actually think he's a better striker than Gassanov is. If he does keep it there, he could win this fight. His leg kicks are solid. I do think that his boxing and overall kicking ability should net him a lot of success. But on the ground, he's just going to be so dangerous from every single position. Those Kimuras, those Darce chokes, and those knee bars are going to be present for Gassanov. So Gassanov has to be careful because every time he shoots in, he's going to need to be worried about what Toone can do to him on the ground. And if Toone can get Gassanov on his back, the fight's basically over. I don't see Gassanov being able to out-scramble Toone if he is on his back. The more I talk about it, the more I'm like convincing myself that Toone has a legit chance at winning this. However, at that same time, Gassanov just has such a crushing offensive wrestling power, that chain wrestling that those Russians tend to utilize a lot in those Sambo backgrounds. It's just going to be debilitating to a lot of what Gary is going to try and do there. It's going to affect Toone's ability to scramble out of positions and get into advantageous positions for himself to lock in his submission. I also don't like how Toone often exposes himself to try and get certain submissions, like you saw in his fight with Toone Lee. And if Toone Lee is able to negate your knee bars and do such heavy damage onto you, I imagine that Shamil Gassanov, who has much superior top pressure, is going to be a lot more debilitating for Toone in this fight, especially if Gassanov decides to be a wet blanket and just lets Toone have the only openings that would give Gassanov an opportunity to land damage and possibly even get a submission here. So even though Toone definitely has a lot of chances here to win this fight, I am going to go with Gassanov here. Just lean it because he's overall just chain wrestling and top pressure are going to be too much for this fight. He's going to wear down Toone and either get a decision, or Toone is going to get a little too agitated, give up his neck, and then Gassanov is going to get a submission here. Hopefully Gassanov fights Martin Yuan or gets a title shot off of this. So for the main event, Superlek Kapmukau takes on Tagir Khalilov. This is just a gimme fight at this point. Tagir is on a 2-fight win streak, but I was just not impressed by his level of opposition. Black Panther barely beat this Iranian guy this past Lumpini circuit, and Chofa has negative fight IQ, and the fact that he was able to get definitive wins over both those guys is still impressive. However, when you're fighting the #1 ranked guy in the world, I just don't believe that you can have that same success against him. Superlek has just ran through everybody else, especially guys who are far superior to people that Khalilov has fought, like Super Bowl and Nabil. I think Tagir is just going to be rushing forward and get a little too reckless trying to land those boxing combinations and those strong overhand rights. And Superlek is going to catch him on the way in with either an elbow or a boxing combination of his own. Expect another spectacular knockout from Superlek here. He'll just continuously work the legs and the body, shutting down Tagir, slowing him down as time progresses. And even though Tagir does still have that knockout power, I don't think he's going to land that shot against Superlek. I think Superlek is going to get a finish here with those elbows and with a first-round knockout. After this, have Superlek fight Jonathan Haggerty for the Bantamweight Muay Thai title. It makes sense. I don't really want Rod Tang to have 2 belts so that he can just destroy 2 divisions by refusing to fight the top-level guys. Also, there's a story there with Jonathan Haggerty losing to Superlek in the past. So with that, guys, that's the end of my video with all my predictions. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, consider subscribing for more content. Leave a comment about your own predictions. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. This is Share TV Productions, and I'm out.